Hi friends, welcome back. Continuing with the task 1 of academics IELTS examination, here I present before you the second type which we are going to do today, and that is bar chart. So the question is right in front of you. You have a bar chart signifying different bars and information on x-axis and y-axis about what is that chart showing. It is about GDP levels of 3 different types of countries. One, the wealthy countries. The second, who accepted the globalization, and the third ones who resisted globalization. So 3 different types of countries. You have a lot of data on the bar charts. Their percentages. GDP is the gross domestic product of a country, and which is represented using percentages. So that is the basic of the chart which is being presented to you. You don't have to be really worried if you don't. Sometimes the question comes in the exam and the meanings of few words are not very clear to you. If you do not actually know how GDP is calculated or what does GDP actually means, that does not has to do anything with the examination. You just have to form sentences of whatever information you are able to see in the picture. So it is more or less like a picture analyzation or picture interpretation into your own words. So don't bother about the meanings and contextual meanings of the pictures which are presented to you or the graphs or the charts which are given to you. Just learn how to frame different types of sentences, and there you go. So here a quick revision. We have to follow the approach of 3 to 4 paragraphs. In the introduction paragraph, we have to include three things. The name of the graph. So here comes the bar chart. The bar graph or the bar chart. What is it showing? It shows the annual growth of gross domestic product. I have just done a bit of rephrasal because there's nothing much that we can do. Annual growth of gross domestic product in 3 different types of countries. But here, yes, I have mentioned those countries by using a semicolon. So a semicolon is used when you have introduced something and now you want to name or you want to explain those things. So we have written in 3 types of countries, semicolon, and then we're writing which 3 types are they. So first is wealthy, comma, those who adopted a global approach to business, ones who adopted global approach, and the others who did not. And there are other third category who did not do the same. Now the third requirement was to write the striking feature, or we mentioned that there was stands out. So if you are looking at the bar graph, you can see that there is something in 1960s, a bar that is going quite high, and if you follow the same color in the following years, it is going on reducing. But at the same time, there is a bar for the other type of countries which is quite low in the 1960s, but it goes on increasing as the time progresses. So I thought of putting this in what stands out. So I have written there can be seen a contrasting trend. Now what we mean by contrasting trend is an opposite trend, where one country is facing a decline in GDP, at the same time, the same particular time period, another type of country, another group of countries face a continuous increase. So I use the term there can be seen a contrasting trend between wealthy and globalizers in terms of their GDP. So contrasting trend in what? In terms of their GDP, and contrasting trend between 2 different types of countries. So here is how you can form your introductory paragraph, fulfilling all the 3 necessary conditions. Now how to explain a bar chart. There are different types of sentences, or I can say different types of ways of starting a sentence. The different information or the more information you are given in your graph, the better it is. See, in your graph, if you try to find out the elements, so you will see one, you are given years. What I prefer doing is, while doing the task 1, that I try to find different elements. And then I start my sentence with one sentence with at least one sentence with each of that element, and that gives complex sentences to me, compound sentences to me, and more than above, different types of sentence structures, a different start to every different sentence. So here I could find that okay, there is one element is the time period, that is the years, 1960s. So I started my first sentence with years, in 1960s. Now you can just focus on 1960s and see what information is there for 1960s. You can see the wealthy countries were far ahead others. So the bar graph of wealthy countries is far above others, having a GDP of nearly 5%. You can see it at the y-axis, you have numbers for percentage. So in the x-axis, you have the years. So in 1960s, the GDP of wealthy countries were far ahead others, and it was nearly 5%. So that is our first sentence. Now, because we said that it is far ahead others, and we gave the number for only the wealthy countries, in the next sentence, what we can do is we can compare it with the others. So we are writing this figure. You can use this figure is double that of non-global countries and 3 times of the ones working at global level. So this is the second thing. Whenever your chart or your graph has numbers, try to find is there any link like double, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 10 times. If you find so, you're good that you are finding one another type of sentence to put in your write-up. So this is how you need to think logically. You have to extract information and you have to learn these other techniques, If you find out there are years, okay, I can start one sentence with years. Now it is 5% and 10%, so it is twice or double. So I can make another sentence using double or twice, or example like 5 times, 10 times. So that can be another type of sentence. You have to try to use as many synonyms as you can. So I have written here non-global countries for the ones who did not accept globalization. And for the globalizers, I have used the ones working at global level. So you do not have to think as such of a particular synonym that what are global countries called. No, you can just change the form of presenting that. One is globalizers. I have used at the other place I have written them as ones who operate at global level, the countries who work at global level, countries who welcomed globalization, countries who supported globalization. And the other hand, the ones who did not do that, non-global countries, countries which resisted globalization. Did I say who? It should be countries which. Who is used for human beings. Countries which resisted globalization, countries which did not present their support to globalization. Just you have to find synonyms like these, not an exact synonym. So not a tough job at all. Furthermore, if we go ahead, so now this was about 1960s. We explained about 1960s. Now, if you move ahead in 1970s, you will see that there is a drastic change. Drastic means a huge, a significant change. So for change, the connector that can be used is however. However is used when you are presenting something completely opposite to what you just said. So it is however, comma, the period of 1970s. Now don't start your sentence with saying in 1970s. No. Try to use a different approach. So the period of 1970s. So past tense again, because we have a data which belongs to past. So an upside down change. Upside down change because what? The countries which were at having a higher GDP, they have seen a decline. And on the other hand, the countries who were low in GDP, they witnessed a rise. So that is what we are going to write. They saw an upside down change, that it was a complete, big, significant, drastic, huge. You can use any amount of vocabulary. We have a list which has been forwarded to you. You can use any vocab from there. Upside down change with globalizers. Now this is what they have mentioned in the graph, so I have used it here. Upside down change with what? With globalizers doubling their GDP, while the richer nations which were at quite a high level, which were far ahead others, they suffered a setback of 3% per year. So because it is completely opposite to what happened 10 years back, so that's why we wrote upside down change. With globalizers, they were able to double their GDP, and the wealthy nations, they suffered a setback. Because fall of 3% per year in GDP is really a huge thing for a country. Suffered a setback means suffered a huge loss, were at disadvantage. These are the things you can write. Next, so now we have used 1960s, 1970s, the period of 1970s, and now I don't wish to repeat it. So what I have written is the next decade. Decade is a period of 10 years. We are moving from 1970s to 1980s. So the period of next decade or the next decade. Witnessed. Now witness is again the synonym for saw, because we have used saw here. So we won't be using it any further now. We'll write a synonym, that is witness. The next decade would ultimately mean 1980. Witnessed means saw a similar trend of falling GDP in wealthy countries. So we have similar trend, again a vocab to describe or explain your graph. Similar trend because for wealthy nations their GDP continued to fall. So a similar trend of falling GDP in wealthy nations for the countries. Now one more type of sentence starting with for. So as I mentioned, first element was time. So we wrote enough about time, 1960s, the period of 1970s. So now, or one more thing that we changed, the next decade. Second element we have is different types of countries, right? We have tried to use that also to initiate a sentence. We have written for the countries which resisted global approach to business, because there were three different types of countries. So one of the type was the countries who resisted global approach to business. So that is our starting for the countries which resisted a global approach to business, comma, their GDP fell even sharply. So for those countries, their GDP fell even sharply. Again, sharply is a vocab word used to demonstrate the description of a chart, that it is a falling trend. Even sharply. Sharply means something which fell significantly or at a sharp decline, that we say. Fell even sharply to just 1%. Now, if we have said such a big word to sharply, we are supposed to give a figure also, that it fell sharply to just 1% in 1980s and rose by only 0.5% in next 10 years. Now, another way to write the time period is in the next 10 years. On the other hand, now we have something opposite to this in 1980s. On the other hand, countries which show a positive attitude towards globalization, countries which welcome globalization, countries which adopted a global approach to business, or countries which showed a positive attitude towards globalization, comma, their figures continue to rise, one thing, and even surpassed is crossed, even surpassed the 1960s highest of rich countries. So we ended right from where we started, that in 1960s, rich countries had the highest GDP, and we ended at the figures continue to rise and even surpass the 1960s maximum or highest of rich countries. One another complex sentence and a good wind up to what you have written. In such a case, if you have word or limit left with you, enough words to write a fourth paragraph, you can. Otherwise, even if you wind up here, it's all perfect. If you want to write, you could have said that overall, globalization affected almost each and every type of country in terms of their gross domestic product, with some running successfully or with some earning profits while others were at a disadvantage. So just an overview has to be presented in the last paragraph, that yes, GDP affected all types of countries. Some were successful in handling that while others faced some problems, or others suffered a downward fall in their economy or saw depression in their economy in terms of their GDP. So that's all. No data, no explanation, just an overall picture. That could have been added if you have sufficient words left with you. you can write a conclusion also. But in conclusion, you have to write overall. We don't use to conclude, because it's not something we are concluding, it's just we are presenting overall picture. So this is how you have to plan your task 1 for IELTS academic examination, the bar chart 1. You have to think of different elements. You have to look for different elements in the picture that has been presented to you. There are years, there are names of countries, there is percentage and whatnot. You have to use all of them to start your sentences. Once you have a start of the sentence, you can definitely make it. So I'll request you to go through it again, listen it again, read it again, mark whatever has been marked and told important, and try one paragraph yourself. Get it checked by us. We are available for feedback. And keep learning, keep practicing. Only then you will lead to improvement. But yes, keep improving every day. Keep learning something new. Till then, bye-bye. Have a good day.